Freaking Awesome. I am one of your co-hosts, Sami Kinnison, here with Angela Belford. And today we have very special guest, Mark Zweig, who is a Fayetteville entrepreneur, written a book, Confessions of an Entrepreneur. And Angela and Mark, I think you guys have a lot in common, I think, in just how you view the world and how you approach these things. And today we're going to be talking a little bit more about how entrepreneurship specifically can support a freaking awesome lifestyle. So, Angela, do you have anything else you want
I
to add to
do.
that
I do.
first?
I got to do a little shout out because, I started our marketing agency in 2008. And so I feel like distantly, Mark has been sort of a mentor of the startup and entrepreneurial community. And so while he and I have not ever been close personal friends, I feel like we've run around we've been in a lot of the same rooms together. And so I'm just really grateful. I love reading your articles in the Northwest Arkansas Business Journal. And I'm just appreciate you being here today to someone else to riff on these ideas of how entrepreneurs think. Because many people tell me I think weird. And I'm like, yeah, it's different. And they also think we're super risk averse. I mean, risk takers,
Yeah.
and you cover that. So anyway, Mark, why don't you tell us a little bit about you and kind of
Oh,
how you identify yourself these days?
gosh, I don't know. I identify myself as just an old guy these days, Angela. That's basically it. I used to be the young guy. Now I'm an old
Hashtag
guy.
OG.
It's, I mean, you understand. I mean, I've done a lot of different things. I'm a professor. I write. I've got a newsletter I've been putting out for 35 years, the Zweig letter. Wrote a lot of books on architecture and engineering, business related stuff. But been a developer, been in the media business, owned 6 magazines, book publishing, management consulting, construction. So did a lot of, I'm an owner of a motorcycle manufacturing business. So I've done a whole lot of different things, and not sure I identify myself any particular way at this point. I'll leave that up to the people that I'm talking with. They can identify me any way they like.
You
Sounds
probably
a
made
little
your
bit.
most known in Northwest Arkansas, starting out real estate, right? That was kind of the
Yeah,
architecture development stuff.
yeah, I came here in 2004. I'd sold my management consulting, publishing, media business for architects and engineers. I was living in Boston for 17 years, and then moved here in '04 when I sold it to private equity and started teaching at the Walton College. And it's been great. I mean, I love this area. It's super supportive of entrepreneurs. They're very welcoming of outsiders. I
Hmm.
originally grew up in Missouri, so it's not like the culture is completely foreign to me, but yeah, that's kind of what I was known for here locally was cedar shingles. That's what some people will say about me. They're like, "You're the guy who puts cedar shingles on every house." Uh,
That's
but
funny.
we're in the middle of a move. Actually, last night was our first night in a new house that we still have a lot of stuff to move into. But we bought Jim Blair's old house. It's a
Oh, that's fun.
crazy house if you know where it is. And it's
That's
absolutely
awesome.
insane. It's got anyway, we did about 8 weeks. We did a huge renovation on it, and last night was the first night here.
Well, congratulations. That's
Thanks.
exciting.
I would love to sort of just kick off the question for both of you, who I think entrepreneurship is a big part of your just, history and journey. What would you say makes an entrepreneur different from other people?
You want to take that one on, Angela?
Oh, well, you wrote a whole article on it. That's why you're here, is because I was like, this is what I say, but he said it so succinctly. I love it so much. Well, I mean, one of the things I think that it's easier for me to think about, like, someone says entrepreneur and they're like, oh, they love risk. They love
Yeah.
taking a lot of risk. And I'm like, no, I am the most risk mitigating human on the planet. Like that, what I am really, really good at is risk mitigation. And so it's all about like figuring
So,
out what is the minimum amount of risk that you can have to get a potential reward. So I think that's the most common misnomer that people have, is they think that it's super risky, the things that I do. And I'm like, I mean, I use the example of interns, and so I'll have an intern that, we're paying $10-15 an hour, and I'm like, and they're working 15-20 hours a week. Like, if they're costing me $300 a week,
Right.
can I get at least $300 worth of work out of them? And if they can get 3 hours worth of work, that then the other time is built in, that I could get potential profit and reward, and I can train somebody up. And so
Right.
so it's all about, like, what is the minimum amount of money I have to put in, time I have to put in, that I have a potential reward. So that's the first way that I think that people are different,
Yeah.
entrepreneurs from other people, is they think we're very risk averse.
I,
Maybe
I
this
would
is misconceptions.
I would totally agree with that. I don't think any entrepreneur does anything they think is risky, really. They don't do anything they don't think they're going to succeed at.
Hmm.
And, if you look at like my own case, I mean, there have been times when I had, like we had 19, $20 million worth of debt. A lot of people would have a coronary over that. But we had a lot of assets too.
Hmm.
We had things that we could get rid of if we had to.
Hmm.
And I think the other aspect of it is, if you have six things that you're doing and one of them goes bad, well, you still got five. But if you have
Right.
one job and it goes bad, you got zero. And so,
Yes.
it's the same. It's sort of, and I think I said in that article, or maybe I did or didn't, I don't remember. But as an entrepreneur, you got a business that has a lot of clients or customers, and you can lose one and you're still in business. But if you're
Right.
self-employed, I mean, if you're employed and you have one client or customer, your employer, and if you lose them, you're out of business. So I agree. Yeah, it doesn't seem risky.
Yeah. So I see what you're saying, Mark, about if you have one job
Right.
and you get fired, like there's the risk associated with that.
Sure.
I feel like when I'm responsible for so many other people's livelihoods and different
Hmm.
things like that, that's a different kind of risk. I now have to take on there's some ownership that, people are counting on me.
Sure.
And maybe that's my own codependency issues coming to light, that I'm like, oh gosh, that's a different side of the risk, versus I feel fairly confident in myself that I could get another job. And maybe that's also just the current market that I'm in, that
Well,
there are times where I could be like, well, I don't want to deal with this. I'll go find a new job.
Hmm.
that makes sense. I mean, but I guess as far as like taking on the responsibility for other people, I sort of been well broken in on that with,
Yeah.
two ex-wives and five daughters.
There you
I've
go.
gotten used to paying the bill over a long period of time and doing what you have to do. Sort of moved into that incrementally, you know. Maybe, do you have any kids, Sammy?
I do. I've got a 5-year-old and a 2-year-old.
Okay,
So
well, you're getting into that mode then yourself, and
yeah.
but I don't know, that never really frightened me. I always
Yeah.
felt like I could overcome that. What about you, Angela?
Yeah, I've definitely had a couple of friends that especially if you've had a business fail and yet had employees, like it's a pretty big, it's certainly a big wound that people have to heal from. And I've got a friend that is like, never shall I ever be responsible for other people's mortgage and payroll. And I'm like, that's totally understandable. And I think some of it has to do with making sure your business model's solid,
Yeah,
that you before you are taking on that responsibility. So there are varying degrees of that. One of it is, you also talk about uh, entrepreneurs never do something that they don't fully believe they can succeed at.
right.
And I think there's a confidence in entrepreneurs, and mine is not that I know that this project will succeed, which you kind of allude to, but mine is like, if this doesn't work, I will learn something of how something didn't work, and I will be able to pivot. I will be able to manage it. Like I say all the time, when I take on a new client or a new project, I have full and 100% confidence in my ability to work my tail off, to do whatever it takes to get that project done.
Yeah.
Now, what I may learn in that process is, oh, I didn't set the right parameters. My contracts have gotten better. My interviews have gotten better over the years. You know, I've certainly made plenty of mistakes that
Sure.
were the best learning for me. But as long as you're willing to do whatever you have to do, and I've done some crazy things, like I've
Yes.
emptied the trash for sure, you know, now that's a metaphor for like, I've edited somebody's website on my cell phone while I'm at a bar because I messed up, you know, like you just do what, if you're willing to do whatever has
Yes.
to be done, then it's
Then you don't
failure
fail.
is, you can't fail.
Yeah,
You can't
exactly.
ultimately fail. Now, there are times I've got friends that are like, the
Yeah.
market changed, my business model no longer works. You know, we are in an industry with marketing where people are like, oh my gosh, Canva, AI, blah, blah, blah. And I'm like, I was with my mouth shut, I was researching AI a year and a half before ChatGPT ever hit the headlines because I watched people that
Mhm.
I trusted and said, what are they worried about? And I was following them. And I remember having to teach my writers, I'm going to teach you how to use this AI writing tool. And I
Yeah.
subscribed to, and I paid a lot of money for it monthly. And I did that for a whole year so that when ChatGPT like hit, I'm not trying to say I'm a visionary, I'm just saying like this is what you got to do is you got
Right.
to be always looking. And so
Yeah.
when ChatGPT hit everything and everybody's like, and I'm like, nope, this is not a problem because
Hmm.
there are always going to be people that don't have time. And I have now become a master at programming ChatGPT.
Right.
We name it Carlton. Like, so I just got to stay ahead because when he does really good, we do the Carlton dance around here, you know. Anyway, and so you just like you've got to be willing to stay ahead. Now there's some places that I don't want to do business anymore because I'm not interested in staying ahead of that. And
Sure.
so that parts of my business I have to let die. So
I'm with
round
you.
and round the story.
Yeah, you don't
Well, you
give
can't
up.
fail.
Yeah, you do your job. You're highly engaged. You're constantly learning new stuff. You know, you just briefly touched on one thing. That's this whole idea of failure. I think it's glorified by too many people. They're like, fail early, fail often, fail forward, fail a lot. I mean, I think a failed experiment is one thing, but total failure is another. Total failure is to be avoided. Okay. People get hurt, your reputation gets damaged. I'm not in favor of it. My goal is to teach my students how not to fail. Okay. That doesn't mean that
Mm.
they're not going to have things go wrong. Everybody who's an entrepreneur tries stuff, it doesn't work out. I just call that a failed experiment. That's something we tried that didn't work.
I
I
really
love
like,
that. Go ahead, Sammy.
Angela, I think you talk a lot about when we take on identity statements. And so like I failed, I am a failure is
Yeah.
different than I had a failed experiment. Like this is a thing that happened.
Yeah.
We tried it, tested a hypothesis,
Right.
didn't didn't answer in this the way we thought it would. That's fine. What can we do to change the parameters, put in new variables, or say, yeah, not worth it to continue testing variations on this hypothesis. Let's make a new one and keep going. I think
So,
that makes a big difference.
well, I want to say, like, then what is your definition of failure, Mark? If you say
Yeah.
failure is to be avoided, then tell me
Yeah.
what would you
Failure is that
define?
you
How
go
would you define it?
bankrupt. You know,
Ah,
you go broke. You don't come through. I don't know what else to say. You
What's
don't
interesting
finish,
though
you
is that I
know?
think some people still view bankruptcy not as the end failure. Like it's just
Yeah.
some view it as a tool on their path to success, which I don't know that that's the right answer. But there is even an element that great, you filed for bankruptcy, then you got to keep going. Like,
Right. No, you're right. I mean, if your reputation's intact, I think it's your reputation's the most important thing. You can recover from failure if you have a good reputation. If
mm.
your reputation's shot, then you're screwed, basically. You're not going to bounce back.
I
You
think
know?
that's a really good caveat because, like I was saying, I'm willing to do whatever it takes. And
Yeah,
so that, to me, that is maintaining my reputation. That is
exactly.
like, and even if I've had to fire clients and I've had clients fire me. First time I took I took a project manager, she was pretty new, and we needed to go fire a client. And so we went to their office and we explained things to them. And I'm like, I always want to deliver and I want you to be happy. And I'm just not sure that we're the right fit for you. And so I just want to like part ways and just amicable. And I want you to be successful. And they hugged me and we left. And she goes, "You fired them and they hugged you." And I'm like, "Yeah." And I could run into that person at a networking event and we're going to be okay because
Right.
I saw that this was not going well. And I'm fine to say, like, okay, let's just part ways. And so and I think that's not to say that I haven't made mistakes that I'm like, oh golly, I dropped the ball so bad on that one, and I would hate to run into that person anytime soon because I really screwed up, because we are humans and we make mistakes, right? But I
What's
also
interesting,
try to recover.
Angela, as one of your employees in our day job, I have seen you get how do I say this kindly, really, really upset. The thing that will make you most upset is when we are not fulfilling our promises to clients. You will say, I don't like, honestly, there have been times you're like, I don't care what the hours are. If you aren't fulfilling the promise to the client and you're not communicating well, that's going to get somebody have a much more stern talking to than anything else, really, is whenever
Because it's
people,
reputation.
and it's
Exactly.
your
Exactly what
name
you're
on the
saying.
door. It's
Yeah.
your name on the door, not ours.
Oh yeah, I will throw fits to be like, no, 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 no. When I make a promise, you have a job because you're going to deliver on my promises. I mean, and that maybe it's harsh, but it's like that's why people hire us, is because they
Sure.
know they can trust. And so what you're saying, you're saying that failure is losing your reputation. And I agree with you. That
Yeah.
should be avoided at all cost.
That's it. That's the real failure that one
Mm,
could experience. But anyway, so back on entrepreneurs and what
yeah.
makes them different. So you are trying lots of things. They're not all going to work out, but you're not doing anything that's going to break the bank. No one thing is so big that it's going to tank you. I think the other misconception people have about entrepreneurs is that they have to be inventing something new. That one drives me absolutely insane. It's like, well, you're not an entrepreneur unless you've invented something new. I'm like, dude, let's take a look at Slim Chicken or whatever, and they got 200 and some odd outlets. Are you telling me they're not entrepreneurs? They
Mm,
make chicken tenders. There's
Yeah.
nothing unique
They
about
did
it.
not invent the chicken tender.
Yeah, they didn't invent the chicken, but yet they've got this incredibly valuable business now that's doing, whatever it is, over $1 billion a year in chicken. Um,
Mhm.
because they're entrepreneurs. They understand how to build value, how to build systems, how to scale that thing and
There's
market it.
literally a street in our town that has 7 or 8 different chicken iterations. Like it's the best example of you don't have to create something new, right? Because it's got
Yeah.
like all of them, all the big name, and then there still will be a new one. And I'll be like, because we need another chicken on Chicken Row. Like, oh, okay, let's
Yep.
go. If you want to know what all the chicken places are, they are all on MLK in Fayetteville, Arkansas. Yeah,
No
you're right.
kidding.
There's nothing new. You also mentioned that you think that everybody thinks that entrepreneurs are on a quest to find a need in the marketplace and fill it in a different way.
Yeah,
And that's not always the case.
right. I think a lot of times they sort of end up as entrepreneurs inadvertently because they really like something. They're really passionate. They're interested in something. They start doing it and they see that there's a reaction to it. But the purpose wasn't, oh, let me do a research project to identify a need. And I just found out that everybody in Northwest Arkansas wants, yada, yada. And so I'm going to start doing it. That's a totally different thing. They just started doing it because they like it.
Hmm.
And they stumble into the fact that the market responds to it. And then they go, huh, I could actually build a business around this. You
This
know?
is me in 2008.
Mhm.
And which it's so funny. It's my adorable, cute story now. But back then, I like my husband wouldn't let me start any more businesses. Like, no, you've had enough. And so I started a consulting business in 2008 to help people start businesses. And the first four people I talked to needed a website, and I'm like, well, we've been building websites for years, so okay, I can build a website. And then it goes on, and 10 or 12 websites later, I'm like, where's your logo? And they're like, I don't have a logo. Can you do that for me? Sure.
Right. And we
Sure.
end up
And
in
sure.
the
And a year and
marketing
a half
consulting business.
later, I have this full service marketing agency.
Right.
Yes, 100%. That's exactly how I intended this to be. No, you just keep solving problems for
Yep.
people and listening. I think that
Yes.
that's what entrepreneurs do is they listen for problems and they go, I think there's a better way. We probably are better at building better mousetraps than most of us are not doing inventions, and finding a cleaner way. And in 2008, here's the thing, is that all the marketing agencies in Northwest Arkansas had these very high overheads, and when the market crashed and the recession hit, they were just giant lumbering giants, and they
Sure.
couldn't be nimble, and we were small, and had another software company. We could be small and nimble and listen, what do people need? So we expanded our service offerings for a long time, to the point that I was like, okay, now let's narrow our focus. Now let's keep narrowing our focus.
Hmm.
So I think you're absolutely right that people just listen, solve a problem, find somebody that wants to pay you for that,
Yeah.
listen, solve another problem, right?
Yeah, that's sort of the opportunistic versus the strategic approach to building the business, really. You're just
Mm-hmm.
responding to because you're tuned in.
Mm-hmm.
You see these problems and opportunities out there
So
and
you
jump on them.
you own a motorcycle manufacturing.
I'm a partner in a company that does that. Yes, it's a very unique company. It's based in Goshen, Indiana. It's called Janus Motorcycles. And we make small displacement motorcycles in a variety of designs, where you can customize. We do everything for the buyer. You can get it in virtually any color, combinations of stripes, leather, accessories. We build them one at a time.
Oh,
They're American made, by and large. The engines are not, and a few other components. But yeah, it was
how
started by
did
the guy who's an architect, and our designs look like they came out of the 20s and the 60s. So there's basically sort of two lines of bikes, but it's very gratifying. And I
and what
love
did
like,
was it a strategic decision to start that, or was it a opportunistic one, or what? That's what I was getting at, is like, what
oh
made
yeah,
you, did you see a need in the marketplace, or was it
no,
a passion and fun?
yeah, it's just a fun thing. I mean, I didn't start it. I came into it after it was well established to help these guys grow the business. But no, I mean, they stumbled into it, you know,
Mm,
just like everybody else seems to, or most people. It wasn't a need. They just liked little motorcycle. They liked mopeds, then they liked small motorcycles. Then they started making small motorcycles. Then they started making bigger small motorcycles. It's just and the need. Um, Nobody needs a motorcycle, so you can just start with that. It's a toy and it's unnecessary,
mhm,
entirely, but people like them.
mhm,
Some people like them, and so yeah, I just think this idea that entrepreneurs must find problems that they solve. It, some of these sort of edicts and whatever you want to call them, they come out of academia. And if you look at, like, we talk about what are the core principles we must teach. One of them in our new venture class was hypothesis testing. And I know you mentioned it, Sammy, and I'm not trying to
mhm.
hammer on you with the
Nope.
hypothesis testing, but it's like that we must teach that. I'm like, don't you learn that in science class? I've never tested a hypothesis once
Yeah,
in any business that I started. I'll be honest with you. I mean, certainly not formally. Doesn't mean I don't get like a market reaction or talk to my friends or people who'd be
sure.
potential clients or customers. But it's just like, I think that they sort of, it's a combination of academia and then sort of Me Too writers out there in the business media and social media where they just pound away on these principles, these things, and they become like the reality, but it's not the reality.
I
You know,
feel like it
it's
could be people who is particularly when you're thinking about academia and research, they're like, what is it about these people? What is it that they're
Yeah.
doing? And it's case study. It's not research and I'm setting up an experiment. It's okay, well, what happened here? Can I assess what this person did that led to success? And then you're like, oh, great. Well, Mark went out and he asked people, what did they think about this? And he listened to the community. That's hypothesis testing. He had a theory and he went and tested the hypothesis, but that doesn't mean that the intention was going out and following this formula and following this practice. And I think that to me is one of the differences between entrepreneurs and non-entrepreneurs is that I'm like, what's the formula? What are the steps I need to do? And I think that there's a little bit more
messy.
instinct and a little bit more like, I'm willing to get messy and to just
Yeah.
figure it out. And one of the things that I've been thinking about is that there even is a difference between people who are looking to like make a profit or make money and
Oh, yeah.
entrepreneurs. They're not to bring in the
There
pop
is.
culture reference like always, but it makes me think of the Parks and Rec episode where one of the characters, Tom, wants to make a new business and he wants to have a restaurant. And everyone's like, this is a bad idea. It's going to be not profitable. All the reasons why you shouldn't have a restaurant. Let me tell you the brilliant idea. If you want to make money, you're going to become a middleman for dry cleaning, cleaning supplies and selling that from the manufacturer to the dry cleaners. This is
Right.
going to make you a ton of money. And they're like, he gets the point. He's like, I don't care. It's not actually what the point is to make a lot of money. The point is that I love
Exactly.
this and I want to go follow this. And there are people who are approaching it like, what's the right math equation to get to profitability and all of this money that I can make and have it running on the side? I don't think that's an entrepreneur. I think that's somebody who's looking to earn an income in a way that's different than being an employee, a
I
small business owner.
funny because when people ask me about profit, I'm like, I mean, if you have a lot of profit, you have to pay a lot more taxes. So I'm like, I want to take profit and like fund my next business idea and like test that so that I can use profit from this entity to then like that's this whole podcast, right?
Exactly.
Like people will say, how much does it cost you or how much money are you making off the podcast? And I go, that's a weird question.
Yeah.
I don't, and they're like, how do you make money podcasting? And I went, I don't know. But you're on like 120 episodes. And I'm like, yeah, because if I want somebody to hire me as a coach, a speaker, then I want them to know what I'm going to talk about. I want them to know my personality. I became a certified life coach and I researched all kinds of people. I listened to Lady's podcast for 200 episodes before I decided to invest in her, thing. So this is a business development exercise for me, podcasting. And also, it's just I exploring ideas that I want to do on my book. You have a podcast, we
Yeah.
don't do it to make money. We also want to add value to the world. So there's a karma aspect to podcasting that is like, I want to be able to like share good information and be able to help the world be better humans.
So
So
it's
here
like
we go.
mentoring to the masses. Is that what we're
Mentoring to
Yeah.
the masses. I love
I
that.
think as you said, I mean, really, it's not just things like podcasting and all. It's entire businesses that
Mhm.
the
Mhm.
entrepreneur is not necessarily concerned about the profit. I mean, if you look at our residential development and reconstruction stuff that we used to do, I mean, at our peak, we were doing $5 or $10 million a year in construction. We ended up with a lot of properties, but it really wasn't very profitable at all. And it
Mhm.
really wasn't even what drove us. We just like to transform crappy, ugly, overgrown, poorly maintained structures and show like this is what this could be if
Right.
somebody really did it right, like
Yeah.
hopefully we get our money back on it.
Yeah, break even's not bad.
Yeah, wasn't
It's
the
not bad.
driver at all. So I think there are entire businesses that entrepreneurs have that function like that. And you don't know where it's necessarily what's that going to lead to. I don't know, but there are other benefits aside from profit. You said it, Sammy, the small business owner They're just concerned, a lot of them. Well, they're not all. There are some that just want a lifestyle. And then there are some that just want to make as much money as they can, sucking it out of the business, but they don't really think the business is going to have any real value. It's just
Mm.
what it makes for them. That's their determination of value. And I don't
Well,
think they're entrepreneurial.
there's also people that are like, I am I have a trade. I'm a guy in a truck,
Yeah,
and I wanted to control my own hours. So they want to own their own job. They don't own
right.
their own business. They own their own job. Totally fine. Design your life. I think that's the bottom line of having a freaking awesome life is like design it. Stop being unintentional and stop being like, you know, just whoa,
Letting
woe
it
is
happen.
me. This is the world is happening to me. Life is not happening to you. Like make it happen for yourself. And I know there's
Yeah,
absolutely systemic problems in our world, and I work on that differently. So I always want to caveat and say, I get it. I'm gonna stand in my white privilege here and say, like, yes, I get it. Not everybody, I even within my own family, that my brain works different than
sure.
90% of my family. I don't understand why. It just is what it is. So, and within whatever structure you have, you do have control over your how you think about things, which is why I love this. One of your things, one of the last points you make on this article is that entrepreneurs feel like taking action is more important than ideas and planning,
Yeah.
which I think is also applicable to people's lives. Talk more about that, taking action.
Well, I mean, we all know the entrepreneurs. They constantly talk about what they're going to do, and then there's some
Mm-hmm.
people who just go do it.
Mm-hmm.
And it's the doing. It's like that's why I was never afraid to share my ideas with people. When somebody's like, I've got a really great idea, but I want you to sign this NDA. My
Yes.
response is, I'm not interested. I'm not going to sign your NDA. Okay.
Yeah.
And you think I'm going to steal your idea? No. It's the doers. There's a million ideas of things you could do, but the entrepreneurs actually do them. And that's what makes the distinguishes them is they don't just keep talking and yakking and talking and strategizing and fantasizing. I mean, there are some people I know who always fantasize about stuff and they never do it because in effect that keeps the fantasy alive. If you did it,
Ooh.
you could find out it doesn't work. And then
Yeah.
but
So talk to me about, because everything you've been saying, I'm like, why don't bankers listen to what you're saying? Because bankers, like, I want a full business plan. I want to make sure there's profitability. I want to do all these things. Is it just that bankers and entrepreneurs are just by nature adversaries or like, you know what I mean? Like it
well,
feels like banks give small business loans and they don't understand the entrepreneurial mindset, and it makes me
that
crazy.
that's because they don't really care about it. All they really care about is your credit, what assets you have that they can get a hold of. Okay. They're not really in the business of financing businesses. They're in the business of providing liquidity because you have some other assets that they can grab onto.
Hmm.
And that's the reality. Banks, people don't realize how slim the margin is they work on. They basically, the money that they lend out, they pay like anywhere from, they make maybe 1 to 3% margin on it. And so there's a very, very slim margin. So they can't really afford to make any mistakes. And they're so regulated that
Hmm.
even if they liked you and thought you had a great business plan and wanted to give you the money and had great certainty about it, they get audited by the government, and the government, unless you've got adequate security and other sources of income, and so on and so forth, they're going to get slapped for that, and they run the risk of losing their FDIC.
So
It
that's why
makes
you,
sense.
oh, go ahead.
I feel like banks and entrepreneurs are pursuing different goals, though.
Yeah, they are.
The main goal behind it, it's not that they're in opposition to each other. They can work side by side, but they are pointed in two different ways of what they're hoping to get.
I like that. So that's why you're really active in the startup and angel investing space, is to fill that need for entrepreneurs, and that's why entrepreneurs end up in that space more?
It's one thing, I guess, that you can do that, that gives people some options that maybe they wouldn't have otherwise. But I think more than anything, I just like to help people. I like to fix stuff. I mean, you understand that. It's
Yeah.
like, we've done like 100 houses in this town. We used to restore cars. We like to work on businesses. I mean, it's just all part of the process of trying to transform things and create value where there was none before or less.
That's cool.
You're trying to do it with people. I'm not that quite that ambitious.
Oh, I hadn't seen it like that. That's
I feel
cool.
like there's also an element though, when I've seen like, the sort of startup pitches and things like that,
Yeah.
it's not actually about the idea. It is about the person. It is about,
No,
do
you're
I
right.
think that, because ideas, if it's like, oh great, you're 90% there, 10%, and you're going to be golden. But if you're not the right person who's going to go do whatever it takes, who's going to push, it doesn't matter. You could have 100% of the ideas there, and if you're the wrong person, it's not worth
It's
the
so
investment.
true. Yeah, you're right on with that. I mean, like one of the companies I'm involved with, it's got two primary guys that run it, and they're both very committed. And I just know that they'll do whatever they got to do to make it work. So I don't, we could have everything's against us. I mean,
Yeah,
totally undercapitalized, million problems and all, but nevertheless, that commitment level of those individuals will prevail. And
they
so
will
you're
continue
right.
to persist.
Yes.
So
I
do
had
you
this,
go ahead?
I'm sorry, I was just going to say, I had this guy as a guest speaker this week in my classes. I met him at the Cancer Challenge. His name's Trent Brock. He exemplifies this whole idea of just like, don't give up, ever. He worked for Anderson Consulting, which became Accenture. I'm sure you remember them, Angela. And, he got very, burn out on that. He ends up in New Zealand, starts a popcorn company on a whim, becomes the second largest popcorn company in New Zealand. Not that he knew anything about it at all. Okay. And then he gets cancer and it just keeps getting worse and worse. He, is destroys his hip, and then he gets cancer you know, what's the really bad one?
Pancreas?
Pancreatic cancer.
Yeah,
Okay.
that's
And
kind of a
then
death sentence.
they operate on him and take out his part of his pancreas and his spleen, and then they tell him, oh, by the way, it wasn't cancer.
Oh
Then he turns up with pancreatic cancer, and lung cancer after that.
my word.
Okay. It's just like one problem. But this guy is like, no, I'm not gonna give up. Now he's got rid of it all, and he's walking around. All right. Because he
Wow.
just, it's like a death sentence. He's like, no, I'm just not gonna give in.
I think that's wonderful. Angela, you raised your kids, me included. Our family motto was never give up. Although there was a funny moment there where when tested on this and asked at dinner over card games once, it was like, don't forget the family motto. And my younger brother says, never lose. It was like, well, that could almost also be it. Never be a failure, but also don't give up. And that is how you never lose.
So
Yeah, absolutely. That's what I say about being a business. This year we'll celebrate 25 years in business. But I'm like, I get so much business from staying. People
yeah,
like, oh my
exactly.
gosh, you gave me a proposal 2 years ago. Are you still around? I'm like, and somebody was like, oh, I'm sorry, it's taken me a long time. I may not get back to you for 3 or 4 weeks. And I go, I've been here for 24 years. I won't be here for another couple of weeks. No problem. You just keep going.
Hey,
So yeah, never give up.
one topic you guys need to explore sometime is birth order. Because I'm gonna get, are you the youngest in your family, Angela?
No,
Are you the
no.
oldest?
I am a weird hybrid. So
Yep.
I'm one of those only
Two
oldest.
parent?
I had four families by the time I was my favorite
Okay.
part of my life. I was an only child, but two different families. I was the oldest.
Okay. Well, that's sort of unusual that you're as risk averse or not risk averse, because usually the oldest, like the parents are like, no, don't do that.
Sure.
And then by the time the second or third one comes around, it's like, yeah, they'll
Oh, well,
live.
I never lived in that scenario. I'm very different. I would usually say I'm like, God, they found me in the Cabbage Patch, really. So I figured out growing up that everybody was just making up the rules, and so I could just make up the rules. I am probably most impacted the 5 years I lived with my Uncle Jim, and he started a business
Okay.
when I was like
You-
9, 10 years old, and I was answering a business phone telling truck drivers that I was going to send a truck mechanic to change their flat tire at 10 years old, paging him to get him to the right mile marker. I was most influenced probably by him. And from the way my growing up, so I would have been like 6th generation abject poverty, except for my Uncle Jim. And I'm like, the only way you're going to survive in this world is to have a business, because everybody else that's employees in my family are ridiculously poor. And so I'm like, no, this is the only solution. So I'm weird.
That birth
Sammy
order.
is the oldest and
And I have
absolutely is very
definitely,
risk averse.
I was like, whoa, whoa, whoa.
There
What
you
is
go.
this risk here? Like,
Yeah.
But
so.
We
she's a
have,
good, helpful daughter because she's the oldest and she's very responsible, I'm sure.
yes.
Hey, you better believe
Right?
I'm going to get the family itinerary, the vacation itinerary set, everyone's meal preferences. I'm going to bring it all together, all the logistics.
That's the
She's
characteristic of the
married to
oldest.
an oldest, and then,
Mhm.
of course, their first child is an oldest. And
Yeah.
so one of the favorite humans on the planet is her second child, because I'm like, he's this only non-oldest child in this family.
Well, anyway, it'd be fun for you guys to explore that
Yeah.
sometime
No, I think that's a good idea.
and how that
So,
relates to entrepreneurship, maybe.
That's a
mm,
really good idea.
I love that. What advice do you have? What do you want to leave us with?
Oh, I think that my best advice to people is to do what you really want to do. I mean, things will work out if you do. You'll be able to sustain your motivation level. Every time I ever found myself in a situation where I was doing something I didn't like and I got out of it, I replaced it with stuff that I did. And if you just keep going through that process over an extended period of time, eventually you end up with, a good life situation, which is, I think, what you guys are trying to promote there with
Mm-hmm.
your Be Awesome podcast. But it takes a long time. It takes being willing to say no to stuff that doesn't further your interest or put you in contact with people that you don't really want to be around. I mean, success is really all about just who you spend time with and how much time you have to spend with them. It's sort of my definition of success. And if I spend a lot of time with people I don't want to be with, then I don't feel very successful.
I love that. There is the summary. I can't wait for that to be clipped out and shared as a reel, because that is really, we've talked a lot about that. And I have this year beat the drum. There's a book called The Good Life, and it's about Harvard longitudinal study, and it's all about relationships, 100%. So I love that it's not only who you spend time with, but how much time you have to spend with them. That's golden. Thanks, Mark. This has been super fun.
Pleasure. It's been fun talking with you guys.
Absolutely.
You're good
Appreciate
folks.
it. Oh, well, thanks.
Thanks.
Thank you, everybody, for listening. And I hope that you guys enjoyed it. Feel free to share with your friends, leave a review, or send us an email. Maybe you don't like something we said, you disagree. We'd love to hear it. For now, we hope you guys go and be freaking awesome.